So we're going to go even deeper now into trying to understand race and ethnicity. This chapter is going to be looking at the concept of ideologies. So we'll be looking at many of the dominant ideologies in U.S. history and how those ideologies can lead to a system of oppression. To understand the ideologies, we're going to be looking at U.S. history, but we're also going to be looking at inequalities that have occurred in the United States. We're going to look a bit deeper now in this series of lectures to the broader and more systemic aspect of race and inequality, and we'll be considering social structural causes of racial inequality. Some students are uncertain about what an ideology is, and because that is so important to understanding structural issues in sociology, we'll start with explaining what ideologies are and how they work to build ideas into the social culture. When we talk about ideologies, we're referring to an idea, or more often a set of ideas that reinforce each other, which to some extent create the social order. The ideas often remain unexamined by a large proportion of the population, but the ideas also reinforce social practices. A great example is the idea that slavery was justified because slaves were seen as inferior. Once people accept the idea that a certain group of people are inferior, then that justifies treating that group in a different way, and often in a discriminatory way. Let's think about what kinds of dominant ideologies there are, possibly that are unexamined by most people. Capitalism, for instance, it's a strong ideology in this country. The idea of the free marketplace, as opposed to socialism, or even communism, where the government has a more active hand in regulating and controlling who owns the means of production, and thereby controlling production of goods and access to them. Feminism is an ideology, embraced by some and not so much by others. Feminism advocates for equality for women economically, socially, and politically. It also deals with the rights of women, including reproductive rights. The Protestant work ethic, it's a set of beliefs that centers on the moral virtue of work and the way work can lead to a stronger character and salvation in the afterlife. So you can see the common theme on each of these different ideologies, that they're a set of beliefs that are not always examined closely, that leads people to making certain decisions or behaving in a way that they may not even be conscious of. To some extent, people would just think of these ways of believing as common sense. But you can probably see the chicken and the egg issue here of cause and effect. The common sense aspect of an ideology is that the belief system creates the social order, the belief system reinforces it, and the social order or everyday life then justifies the belief system and that it is right. So I go back to the great theorist W.I. Thomas, who wrote, "Things that we define as real become real in their consequences." If we believe it, and the social order is patterned to follow that belief system, then the outcome is that the belief system is real, and of course its consequences are real. This is a great timeline that helps you look at events in American history and how dominant ideologies contributed to the belief systems that supported those events. Think about the idea of manifest destiny, that phrase first coined in 1845, and juxtapose that to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. How did the belief system have to change over those 200 years to make the Civil Rights Act possible? Or think about the difference that it would have made in 1776 if the passage denouncing slave trade had been included in the Declaration of Independence. Think about the belief system that was abundant in the 1830s, that slavery as a social institution was a good thing. These are all ideologies that supported the social order. Eventually, they're challenged, but some of the vestiges, the holdovers to those ideas, may not be completely gone from society. This slide helps you think about how ideologies can affect the behaviors and the decisions of people. You see, the ideology drives the outcomes of the specific person's beliefs and behaviors. It can also be a driver of public policy or even specific laws built to remedy the issues that the ideology defines. Think in terms of the ideology behind immigration. If one believes that immigrants are taking the jobs of hardworking Americans, and that lower-income Americans are unemployed because their jobs are being taken away from them, then that will affect individual behaviors and also drive the laws that are meant to remedy the situation. You can see how belief systems can drive both individual behaviors and the overall policies created by our governments.